So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Our speaker this afternoon and I actually worked together at Cessna back in the early 70s. He was already an accomplished pilot and flight instructor by the time he came to work at Cessna. And we worked with our mutual friend and colleague Dave Pishko, who was Bruce's boss at the Cessna Air Age Education Department. Pishko had the distinction of being my private pilot flight instructor. And he and Bruce helped me get my private pilot's license. And Bruce worked with me on getting my instrument rating. Actually, I never did really complete that. One day, Bruce was busy while he was trying to help me finish up my instrument, and Pishko said that he'd pinch hit for him. And so he took me up on the 182, and about 15 minutes after we got airborne, he put on his oxygen mask, and he said, let's climb up to about 12,000 feet. So we got up to that altitude, and of course we're now talking to center, and he said we're going to do some altitude awareness training, and I wasn't on oxygen. So he told me it was important for me to start to recognize some of the signs of oxygen deprivation, and I soon began to feel pretty euphoric, and my cheeks began to twitch, and I started to say some pretty outlandish things. So we descended after a while, and he made a note in my logbook. And when Bruce saw Dave's entry in my logbook, he said, he makes incoherent, nonsensical statements when deprived of oxygen, and Bruce is a kind of a deadpan guy anyway. He says, how does that indicate anything? I can get the same reaction by just asking him the same questions on the ground. So Bruce worked with me for several more months, and finally he went back to Pishko and he said, he's basically hopeless, and I think the best thing I can do for the pilot community at large is to convince him to give up flying altogether. So that's basically what I did. So Bruce has been dedicated to improving the safety of the pilot community ever since, and I think after working at Cessna, he decided that the best way to do that was to go to work as the product marketing manager at Flight Safety International here in Wichita. And so he did that, and he specialized in transition and instrument proficiency training programs for the high-performance single-engine airplanes, light twins, and turboprops, and for airline pilot training recruitment programs. He then became the executive director of the AOPA Air Safety Foundation in 1992. Before coming to Cessna,
Don't read the whole thing.
I'm not reading the whole thing. Before coming to Cessna, he served in the United States Air Force as a missile launch officer at Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota. I want you to consider the fact that this man had his finger on the button, and that's a very ominous thought. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology and a master's degree in industrial technology from the University of Maryland. Bruce's title was elevated to president of the AOPA Air Safety Foundation in March of 2009. He will tell you about a further elevation, I guess, just recently. During his tenure, he's brought the Air Safety Foundation to some new heights. He's been very actively involved in writing articles for AOPA pilot and AOPA flight training. He's a very accomplished speaker and lecturer. You probably, if you've been involved in the pilot community, you've heard him speak before on safety. It's our privilege to have him here to address us today, and so without further ado, it's my privilege to introduce Bruce Landsberg.
It's a great pleasure to be here. I've spent 15 very happy years here in Wichita as we were raising our family, and it's always great fun to come back. I see a lot of old friends that I haven't seen in years. A lot of them look a lot older than they did. I haven't changed a bit. Well, I maybe had a little more hair. But anyway, I wanted to tell you a little bit. Some of you who are keeping up with press releases and foolishness like that may have heard that AOPA on Friday announced the consolidation of the AOPA Air Safety Foundation and the AOPA Foundation. Now, if you don't think that isn't confusing, that's precisely why we consolidated them into a new single entity, which is the AOPA Foundation, which is this one up here. The Air Safety Foundation will continue as it always has, but it will be renamed the Air Safety Institute, and will do all of the things that I'm going to be talking to you about shortly, and it resides underneath the AOPA Foundation. I've been named president of that. I put an asterisk there because I've held this exalted title for exactly 3 days as of today. And I have far more questions than I have answers, and so we'll proceed from there. Now, you might wonder about the title. Safety isn't everything. Is anybody here a student of Vince Lombardi? Do you know how that finishes? It's the only thing. And if you think about all of the challenges facing us in aviation today, be it litigation, regulation, high costs of parts, bad public perception, and so forth, they all stem from accidents. And so we think that this is probably a pretty good way of approaching things. The Air Safety Institute, you'll bear with me if I make a few misspeeches here, was established in 1950 as the Air Safety Foundation. It's now 2010. It's been reestablished as the Institute. All of the things that you see here are things that we do, and we'll talk about some of them quickly. Now, I've also highlighted free. We do free general aviation safety programs. Now, you know about free, don't you? Is there any such thing as a free lunch? No. And safety education programs aren't free either. And so we are funded by donations, tax deductible, from predominantly individual pilots and a certain amount of corporate support and so forth that takes care of all of the programs that we do. Our website, asf.org, that does not stand for Arkansas Shakespeare Festival. It will probably change at some point, but it's a very active site, tremendous amount of material on there. And I might ask, is anybody here familiar with it? Have you had the opportunity to go see the site? A few of you pilots and the rest of you aren't identifying yourselves. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Online courses. We have about 30 online courses available, and so this is all fine and dandy, but what about our outreach? How big is our outreach? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. On an average month, we will have over 30,000 course completions, not hits, but course completions every single month, which makes us probably the largest purveyor of safety education on the planet. Now, PSAs, public service announcement, or pilot safety announcement. This is something that we feel is kind of important. And how do you get to people who don't come to safety seminars and don't go to online courses? Now let's see if we can wake this up here, and we'll take a quick look.
Class 10, proper RPM, extra best power, pitot heat is required.
2104 Golf Course, Tower Stop, proper react, traffic on short funnel.
This is not the aviation legacy you want to leave. Recently, we've been averaging one general aviation category A or B runway incursion every month. Unfamiliarity with the airport, distraction of running checklists, or complacency because you've done it so many times can all play a part.
It seems so basic. How hard could it be to taxi an aircraft from the FBO out to the runway and take off, or taxi in from the runway to the terminal? Well, guess what? It can be very complicated, especially at night or in periods of low visibility, and we have had some really close calls out there. So the idea is to get pilots understanding this.